You are listening to the Tricorder Transmissions, ep020. And now, here are Craig and Jeff. Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom. Take your protein pills. Put your helmet on. Ground control to Major Tom.
Welcome back to the Tricorder Transmissions. I am Jeff Hewlett.
And I'm Craig Cohen.
And this week we're going to be talking about the original series episode, Court Martial. So Craig, before we jump into the episode, do we have anything we'd like to talk about?
Well, yeah, I know that there's been talk of the sort of two new writers who have come on board to help Bob Orci write the next Star Trek movie, which is coming out in 2016. But they do not have a director yet. J.J. Abrams, of course, is off working on Star Wars, and he'll be producing this. But there is no director locked in, and I assume that's a decision they're going to have to make soon. But I was wondering if you can think of anybody that you'd like to see directed. I know I have 3 names picked out.
3?
Yes.
Wow. You are a thorough man. Yeah, it's a good question. So I guess my first choice, I would really like to stump for George Lucas.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm just kidding. What a reversal of fortune that would be, huh? So you trade the Star Trek director for the Star Wars director, vice versa. Yeah. You know, sci-fi is such a tricky genre to direct, and you know, to do it right. I mean, and Star Trek is something that's so near and dear to my heart. It would be really tough to sell me on a lot of guys. I mean, I love Nolan's work, but I don't know if his directorial style would work well for Trek. I don't know. It's tough, man. So who are your picks?
All right. Well, 2 of them are kind of cheap in the sense that I sort of looked back at past directors who are still working and guys that I think would be cool to see them get another shot. The first one is Nicholas Meyer, who did Wrath of Khan, and then he came back for, and I always get these screwed up, what was the last original series?
Undiscovered Country? Star Trek 6?
Yeah, and he came back for that one.
2 of the best of the original 6 movies.
Yeah. So I think it would be kind of neat to see him given a shot at it, because it would kind of bridge the gap between the original series movies and sort of these new rebooted ones. The thing that kind of goes against him is he hasn't directed a movie in a really long time. His last directing gig was for a TV movie called Vendetta, and before that it was Undiscovered Country. So he does have something announced called Love Affair for 2015. So that's the only thing that really sort of works against him.
Okay. Number 2.
My second choice is another sort of, I don't know, this is a wishful thinking, but he is incredibly active in the business still. He's doing a lot of TV work right now, but I would think it would be cool to see Jonathan Frakes take a stab at it.
Ooh, wow.
And you know, he directed one of the best Trek movies ever, First Contact.
Yes, he did.
And he also directed Insurrection, which we can forgive him for. But he's been actively working in TV. I mean, he's worked on that show Castle, NCIS Los Angeles, Criminal Minds. So he's still working. So I think that would be kind of neat.
Aren't they trying to get a new Star Trek web series started with him at the helm? Was it called Titan or something like that?
You know what? I think you're right. That would be kind of neat. All right, so I'm going to throw one last name at you, and this one is sort of a current, and you could call him up and coming guy.
Stallone.
Oh my God. At least let him write the script. No, Tron Legacy and Oblivion director Joseph Kosinski.
All right, maybe.
And I think the thing I like about him as a director is the two movies that he's made, regardless of how you feel about the overall content from a storytelling perspective, I think from a production standpoint, they are really, really, really well-made science fiction movies.
Yeah, for the most part, I agree with that. So now here's a question. So you have three guys in mind. Now, what are your feelings on directorial styles across a series? So you have the first two reboots by JJ that have that they both have that JJ feel.
Yeah.
So if anybody you bring in after this is going to bring their own style, likely quite different to the first two. Now, do you think that that's a good thing, or do you think that it should be somebody trying to emulate JJ's style?
I think it's a good thing. I mean, look at the difference between Star Trek: The Motion Picture and The Wrath of Khan.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, they're very, very different movies, and they're both Star Trek, but they're both very, very sort of different takes on Star Trek.
Right. Now, you know, it's tough to argue that. I mean, you know, the motion picture, you know, looking back on the motion picture, a lot of people that I know who are Trek fans kind of look at that movie like, oh God, I hope I don't have to watch that again anytime soon. And, you know, a lot of people look at Wrath of Khan as like, you know, that should be like the first Star Trek movie. And you can pretty much forget almost about the motion picture. But, you know, arguably, you have these two latest Star Trek films that are amongst the most successful Trek films of all time, right? I mean, they make the most money. They have the greatest, good reviews, pretty much, you know, from critics across the board. And people, non-Trek fans seem to really like them, even though some of the Trek fans are kind of anti. But, you know, so it looks to me like they've hit on at least a partially winning formula on 2009 and Into Darkness, right? So is it risking the franchise again by changing the style at this point, since these are working?
Well, yeah, I think the fact that J.J. Abrams is going to stick around as producer and you're going to have, you know, one of the two writers working with two new writers. So I don't think it'll be like a night and day difference. And that would be sort of an argument to just sort of bring in a very sort of workman-like, I'll do what you tell me director.
Right. So it's hard to say. I mean, I think if you brought Frakes into the mix, now I don't necessarily think Frakes would do a bad job, but I think you may draw some ire from, you know, the Star Trek fan base, especially as far as, you know, after Insurrection, you know, arguably could be the worst of the Star Trek movies.
Not with me.
Really?
Not as long as Nemesis exists.
You think Nemesis is worse than Insurrection? Really?
I don't know. You know, in fairness, I've only seen Nemesis maybe 2 times, but all I really remember is like ridiculous data stuff and like dune buggy chases.
Well, ridiculous.
And, like, they made Picard like a badass action hero.
Wait a minute. Well, the dune buggy chase was like maybe 2 minutes long, but there's ridiculous data stuff in Insurrection and Nemesis. So, and I think that the ridiculous data stuff in Insurrection is worse than the ridiculous data stuff in Nemesis. Now, we should sit down and watch both of these movies together. We have never done that. We should do that.
I'll bring the popcorn.
Oh, yeah. You know, it's going to be tough. I just recently watched both of them again.
Yeah.
I watched it because I was glutting for punishment, and I had bought the Blu-ray set for, what was it, $19.50 off of Amazon finally, and I caved in and bought it, and I'm like, you know what, I paid for these, and I'm going to watch them again. So there's 4 movies in the set, so I paid, what, $15 for First Contact and like $1.67 for the other 3 each, right? So I was like, you know, I'm going to get my $1.67 worth out of this other movie. So I watched Generations, and I watched Insurrection, and I watched Nemesis just to see if my position would change. And it kind of didn't. I still put Insurrection at the bottom of those 4. Not that it's a bad movie, but it just doesn't feel like it should have been a movie.
Well, the thing that I always have thought about Insurrection is it didn't have any real stakes. It was a colony of 100 people.
Yep.
There were no galactic ramifications of that movie, and
Yeah, not
I think the
really.
one thing we've come to expect from a Star Trek movie is there's either something really really serious going on with a cast, with a crew member, or there's something that is impacting the entire galaxy.
Oh, absolutely. And Nemesis actually had that.
Mhm.
And it had some good space combat scenes, which I think put it over Insurrection. I mean, there was, honestly, there is some crap in there. And I'm not going to say it's a great movie overall, but comparing the two, I would rather watch Nemesis than watch Insurrection. That's just the way I look at it. But anyway, back to the director. we totally digressed.
Yeah.
But I think that, Frakes, I mean, I'd be willing to give it a shot, but I'm not sure. I think it might bias people ahead of time. I think you probably have to go with somebody totally new to the Trek universe, but that has a decent history of directing.
Yeah, it'll be definitely interesting to see who is announced, because if they want to hit that 2016 date,
They gotta get moving.
Yeah, they're going to at least have to start lining people up. I mean, directors commit to things and then they're tied up for a year or two. So,
Yeah.
they're going to have to lock somebody up soon. So I know I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye out for who's taking over, and I'm sure we'll talk about it when it's announced. But we do have to talk about an episode of the original series.
Yes, we definitely do. And before we do that, I'm going to really quickly just say that if any of these people who are working on the new Star Trek movie for 2016, I want to say one word to you. Okay? Just one word. Gorn. That's it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. So anyway, to Court Martial. So This week's episode is Court Martial. It is actually a milestone for us here at the Tricorder Transmissions, as it is our 20th official episode.
Wow, look at that.
So clap of hands for us. That's pretty cool. We've got 20 episodes now. It doesn't feel like we've been doing this that long.
Yeah.
But we have. So 20 episodes and 3 special episodes, if you count episode 0. So we've come a long way in a short span of time. So Court Martial originally aired on February 2nd of 1967, and its remaster was on May 10th of 2008.
All right, and I have a little segment from the NBC press release from January 16th, 1966, and it reads, Captain Kirk is charged with negligence and brought to trial following the disappearance and reported death of one of his officers in court-martial on the NBC television network colorcast of Star Trek on February 2nd, 1967.
Very, very, very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So are you ready to jump on in?
I am ready.
Okay, so we are going to start our commentary in 3, 2, 1. Hey, check that out. You get 2 Enterprises and a shuttlecraft in the opening shot here of the remastered episode. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and this is one of the extreme instances of, sort of deviating from the initial original shot.
Yeah, and did you notice there's a little bit of damage on the Enterprise as it flew by the camera there?
Yeah, kind of selling the reason that they're at a starbase.
Yeah, look at that. They have like a projection on the wall of some sort of a chart there with a bunch of different ship models on it, or different class numbers on it there. And there's 1701, which is the Enterprise, has a completion status. I guess that's like a repair chart, but the Enterprise is not the longest line on that chart there.
No.
Kind of cool. What's the longest? 1830 NCC 1831 starship status. We should probably look that up and find out what ship that was.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show you how many ships are actually in the fleet, right? Because up until now, I don't think we have an idea of how many ships there really are, and how many different models there are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as we'll find out as the show goes on and the movies go on, this is so cool. There's a little 2-person transporter here in the quarters, Commodore's quarters. He has his own personal transporter.
Yeah, that was very cool. It jumped out at me. It made me wonder about how many different transporter locations there are.
Yeah. So
This is where I start to have a problem with the episode.
Yeah, they was a little teenager, but yeah.
How did she get there?
I don't.
And
how did she know
live
Kirk
at the
was there?
Starbase?
I guess she does. She must live there. But
that's pretty convenient.
Yeah. So a little background on the episode for anybody who's not watching along with us. So the premise here is that the Enterprise was caught in some sort of an ion storm, and the ship sustained some serious damage, and one crew member died. The crew member that died happened to be a longtime colleague, I guess, of Kirk's and this teenage girl's father. And there's a little bit of a discrepancy here. Kirk had issued a red alert order about this ion storm and had to jettison this pod that this guy was in. And now there's some controversy over whether or not Kirk issued the red alert before ejecting the pod or after ejecting the pod. So the computer says that Kirk ordered the red alert after that he ejected the pod, and Kirk saying that he ejected the pod afterwards. So, a little controversy, little CSI stuff going on here. So Kirk is now technically, I guess, under arrest, right?
Yes. And this episode was written by Don Mankiewicz, who is from the legendary Mankiewicz family. His dad co-wrote Citizen Kane, and the Mankiewicz family is probably about as close to Hollywood royalty as you can get. I mean,
wait a minute, more royal than the Spellings?
Well, there was Mankiewicz's involved in the early Superman movies in the 70s and the Bond franchise, and there's Mankiewicz's working in TV to this day.
Yeah, nice.
But Don wrote this episode, and he was interviewed about it for the book These Are the Voyages.
Nice.
And he said, my impression was that they needed what in those days would have been called a bottle show, something that could be done very cheaply that didn't require a lot of blowing up of anything, and I believe I suggested a courtroom show. I'd done many of those in the past, a novel and a screenplay, so I said, why don't we do a court-martial? Let's put Captain Kirk on trial, and it would have to be a trial of the time. We're not going to bring in human characters if we can use electronic characters. So the witness against you would be a computerized device that can reveal everything that happened and seems to nail him. So we started with that.
That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
So there's been a couple of other bottle shows so far this season. And McCoy is now drinking a martini out of a stemless martini glass, the likes of which I actually own. I have 4 of those in my cabinet here. Look exactly like that. But so, we're in a bar scene now where Kirk and McCoy are talking to a couple of other Starfleet officers, and they're kind of giving Kirk the needles.
Yeah.
They're kind of sticking it to him. I guess word is traveling around already, and Kirk said, "Well, you guys have already made up your minds that I'm at fault here." Kirk has pretty much been convicted by the court of public opinion, right?
Oh yeah.
So poor Kirk. So one thing I've learned from this episode already, right, is that the guy who Kirk supposedly has killed is Benjamin Finney. So I am going to go out on a limb and say that everybody from Kirk's past is Irish, right? So you got Finn again, right, was his bully, and now he killed Benjamin Finney. Yeah. So everybody's Irish in the future.
Yeah. And here is Shaw. What's her name? Ariel Shaw.
Yeah.
Who has amazingly a past with Kirk. And
oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, Kirk has really fit a lot into his 30 some odd years of life based on what we've learned just in this season's first 20 episodes.
Yeah, it's amazing how many times and how many remote locations Kirk comes into contact with people from his past.
Yeah. So here he is with Commander, Stone? Is it Commander?
Yep.
Yeah.
Commodore Stone, Commodore.
Oh, yeah. And he is played by actor Percy Rodriguez. And it's kind of neat that later on in both their careers, he worked with Shatner on T.J. Hooker.
Oh, It's awesome. Once we get done with all the original and animated series, we should do T.J. Hooker episodes.
Hey, I'm all for it.
Cool, man. Cool.
Yeah. So there's some cool remastered effects going on during these scenes. One that comes to mind is when in the background out the window you see a little shuttlecraft fly by.
Yeah, that was on over the window projection there, and you also saw that in the replaced matte painting of this star base. So they have a computer generated star base now, and you see a shuttlecraft fly by. So a lot of subtle there's a shuttlecraft there. I can see it going by now. There's a lot of subtle changes in effects in this remaster when they show little shots of the ships flying around, shots of the ships in orbit, the star base, the things out in the window. So you'd think for a bottle episode that this wouldn't have a lot of remastered effects, but it actually does have quite a few.
Yeah, it seems like they, in the case of the shuttlecraft outside the window, that was something that there was no way they were going to do that in 67.
No.
But overall, I guess they're just doing, the budget probably wasn't as much of a concern as it was in the 60s. They probably had X amount of dollars to spend. And, with the computer effects, they probably had that shuttle already built for another episode. So they just, flew it in. But that's one of the really cool things I like about the Blu-ray collection that they put out is they didn't, they gave you the option of watching either version. And if you have a player that's equipped for it, you can toggle back and forth even between the remastered version and the original version, and you can almost A/B shots, which I think is really cool because it allows you to watch it however you want, depending on your mood. And I tend to lean towards the remastered version, but I do like to look at the original version just to get a reminder of, what's different, and also to, notice, or to be able to point out, differences like that opening shot, which is drastically different.
Oh, absolutely. And, this is, as far as, of my passion for physical media, this is yet another notch, on the scorecard for physical media, because you can stream all these episodes on Netflix and Amazon Prime and StarTrek.com, but no other medium besides the Blu-ray allows you to have both versions and toggle between them. And if you're a real Star Trek the original series fan, there's no better way right now to watch these than on the Blu-ray.
Oh yeah,
it's spectacular. So now the tone here, the scene is changing. So it seems that Commodore Stone has pretty much made up his mind about Kirk. He's very, very accusatory, and Kirk is defending himself.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, the evidence, the computer evidence says that he jettisoned that shuttle before issuing the red alert, and machines don't make mistakes.
Yep, that exactly. And the premise of this episode can still happen today in our own lives, where we rely so heavily on computers to track everything that we trust them implicitly. And when the computer says something is wrong, we just we buy it. All right, well, the computer says it, and it's a computer, so it's infallible. But computers are just as capable as us of making mistakes, because computers, while they are mechanical, are programmed by people.
Yeah.
And they can be manipulated, and they can be hacked, and they are capable of making mistakes. Now, look at the drink that she is drinking. That is obviously not fruit on top of that drink. It's like little pieces of like rubber or something. It's like replicated fruit.
Yeah. And then is that like a little peppermint stick?
Yeah, like a swirly straw or something.
Yeah.
And an umbrella. She's got an they still have umbrella drinks in the future. That's good to know.
So this is Ariel Shaw.
Yep.
And she is going to be the prosecutor against Kirk, and we learn that she has a past with him, and she at one time dated him.
Of course.
This is actress Joan Marshall, who unfortunately is no longer with us. She died back in 92 at the age of 61.
Well, that's young.
But yeah, she had a pretty active career. She started out with, TV work like Bonanza and I Spy, and, worked right on through the, the 60s and 70s. So, unfortunately, she died too young, but we are talking about her right now and enjoying her work in this episode.
We certainly are. And, as someone who worked through the 70s, she probably could have utilized the same outfit and earrings for all of those years. That outfit is timeless up through maybe, 79?
Yeah, it almost looks like something Mrs. Roper would have worn on Three's Company.
I was just thinking that. Oh, man. As a big Three's Company fan, that is totally a Mrs. Roper muumuu. If I've ever seen one. So yeah, Kirk's finding out here that his old flame is now his prosecutor. So this is kind of a little knife in the stomach for Kirk, huh?
Yeah. And this is also like another kind of convenient, plot device. I don't think they've really detailed how many star bases there are, but you have to assume that these people are assigned to these star bases.
Yeah, I would think, because, she couldn't have been, well, I guess we don't really necessarily know the range of the transporters. I mean, she could have transporter hopped from somewhere else, but, I mean, I guess if we're going to err on the side of space travel caution, she probably would have had to flown in from somewhere, right?
Okay.
I love this Matlock guy they have defending Kirk. This guy with his books hanging, he hates computers.
Yes. What? Cogley, right?
Yeah.
Sam Cogley.
Yeah. And look at the architecture in this room. Mm-hmm. Super 70s. And it's not even the 70s yet. Still the 60s. But yeah,
and I love that artwork on his wall.
Yeah. What is that? Is that the Gorn asteroid?
It looks like it possibly could be, but it's kind of neat.
I
would hang that in my living room.
You probably could get that print somewhere. Someone's probably made that. Look at his suit, too. That is one hell of a suit. He's got a pen. Is that a pen sticking out of his pocket? He hates computers, so I guess he's got to write everything down.
Yeah.
And he's pleading the case for books, thousands of books.
Yeah, he's saying all the information you need is in these computers, but nothing beats the, picking up a book and looking up your information.
Yeah, exactly. And plus it'll delay Kirk's trial by a month or two as he reads through all of these books, right?
But this guy is sort of making the argument for, we shouldn't blindly, depend on computer systems.
Well, of course. And it's also a counter, right? It's a counter argument to, Commodore Stone and the rest of this tribunal, who are taking the computer's word for everything. So now they've got this defense attorney who is staunchly anti-computer. So you're making two different statements, opposing statements, and putting them against each other.
So now we have, I think, what is kind of I'm not going to say important moment, but a first moment, unless I'm mistaken. This is the first time we're seeing full dress uniforms.
You are absolutely right. Okay. I was going to bring that up, but you beat me to it.
Yeah.
So the introduction of full dress uniforms, not just Kirk, but the entire tribunal in front of him. And they all have these strange looking triangle configurations of insignias. I guess that denotes either their honors or their rank, but I guess the people, the Commodore Stone seems to have twice as many as Kirk does.
Mm-hmm.
So he's obviously higher in rank or higher in commendations.
Mm-hmm. And I actually, the large size Kirk figure that I have, I guess it's close to a 12-inch. I think it was probably put out by Playmates in the 90s at some point. It is actually in this dress uniform, and you've probably seen it when you've been over to record an episode or whatnot.
Yeah, he's up on top of your little bookcase there.
My bookshelf, yeah.
The daughter really sells this to me. She looks like she's been crying for days.
Yeah,
and she looks really PO'd. And of course they're going to ask Mr. Spock to come up and testify.
Yeah, and I kind of like the whole process here. There's some significance to the chair that Spock's sitting in, and they also have to hand over, I guess, a card that contains all of their vital information.
Yeah, I guess so. And this, and the computer's reading off their
commendations, their accomplishments.
Yeah, so it's got Vulcanian Scientific Legion of Honor. Is that what it just said? Awards of Valor. So Spock has had a couple of Awards of Valor. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We hadn't heard about those before, right?
Oh, and I don't think so.
And, well, Spock has just said, they asked him, do you know anything about computers? And he says he knows all about them. So they're asking him if he knows of anything that could cause an inaccuracy. So what they're doing is they're taking the computer expert on the Enterprise who is incapable of lying, and using him to roast Kirk.
Yeah. But Spock sort of holds to his beliefs here. He obviously supports the captain, because even though he didn't see everything, he knows that they were in a red alert before the captain jettisoned it. And he said, he makes a cool analogy. He says, just because I drop a hammer in a certain kind of gravity, I don't have to stick around to watch it drop to know that it did drop.
Right, and that's a huge statement.
Yeah.
That just goes to show you that, regardless of how staunchly logical Spock is, he trusts Kirk implicitly.
Mm-hmm.
And Vulcans don't speculate. He speaks from logic. But here's your camera comment. If I let go of a hammer on a planet that has positive gravity, I need not see it fall to know that it is in fact fallen. So, and he's relating that to human characteristics. So it's impossible for Kirk to act out of panic or malice. That doesn't seem logical to me, but in Spock's estimation, it's fact.
Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, and now we're going to get kind of an interesting defense tactic where, Kirk's counsel does not, I guess, cross-examine. And this will be a trend. He won't cross-examine anybody who the prosecution calls to the stand.
Yes, it reminds me a lot of modern court drama shows. I watch a lot of them, I'll confess. I'm a fan of, Matlock CSI, Law and Order, those kind of shows. And yes, I'm a Judge Judy fan as well. So I watch a lot of court drama. And this is kind of something you see a lot as a tension builder. Is, you think the defense is gonna leap out and question everything and pick everything apart, but no, you have the cool defense attorney is like, no questions for this guy. Let him go. And they just wait, and they give you this incredible revelation at the end to save their client, right?
Yes.
And wow everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have some random Asian lady who we've never seen before.
And I don't think we'll see again, but she gives a pretty damning testimony.
She does.
In the sense that she reveals that there was a little bit of history between Kirk and this guy that might have had, given Kirk a reason to jettison him before going to Red Alert.
Yeah, and knowing what we know about Kirk from the past and the difficult situations he's been in with people, I don't think that the reasoning and the motivations would have been enough for Kirk to actually murder this guy that way. It just doesn't seem. I mean, Kirk is not one to, dispose of someone who gives him trouble in his crew.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And this is something that occurred back when Kirk was an ensign.
Mm-hmm. So he's had years.
Yeah, he became the captain of a starship. There wouldn't be any reason for him to hold any kind of grudge.
No, and honestly, if this guy was under Kirk's command, he could have easily said, "Hey, Starfleet, listen, this guy and I have a tense history. Why don't you transfer him to another ship?"
Yeah.
There's no reason why Kirk would be like, "Oh God, I'm stuck with this dude. I gotta kill him."
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. Like, that's his only choice. Or he looks at like an opportunity like this, like, hey, this guy's in this pod and I can just kind of press this little button and kill him, and then make up some story about, how I was on Red Alert, but I really wasn't, and blah, 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 blah. It just seems implausible to me, and I'm sure to you as well, knowing what we know about Kirk's nature. So I guess we kind of side with Spock on this one.
Yeah. And this almost feels like if this was your random episode of like an NCIS or something,
Yeah.
then it would be a little bit easier to swallow, where you're getting introduced to these characters for the first time. But here, I mean, we've had, quite a few episodes to get to know all of our primary players. And, this was done a little bit earlier in the production order, but you don't really factor that in when you're watching it, in the sequence that they rolled it out.
Yeah, and now you're seeing Commodore Stone calling out Mr. Cogley, the defense attorney, on his not asking any questions. So, and Cogley says he wants to get all of this business out of the way and get Kirk himself on the stand.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna see Cogley talking to Kirk, and getting Kirk's take on all of this. Getting all of these feelings and theories out of the way. And they're gonna rattle off all of Kirk's commendations here, and they're actually gonna cut them off partway through because he's got so many of them. And the Ariel, the prosecutor, stands up and actually says, "Listen, I concede that Kirk's got about 1,800 commendations. Let's just not listen to all of them."
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
great.
And this is actor playing. The lawyer here is Elijah Cook Jr., who he died back in 1995 at the ripe old age of 91.
Wow, good for him.
Yeah, and he did a lot of work. He worked on Perry Mason, of course, Star Trek. He was also on an episode of The Bionic Woman. He even popped up on Alf.
Oh, I love that show.
In addition to a few dozen, movies, including The Big Sleep and Rosemary's Baby.
Do you have any data on what episode of Alf he showed up on?
I do.
Ooh.
I do. Yes.
I am intrigued.
All right. He was on the episode of Alf entitled "We're So Sorry, Uncle Albert" from 1988.
Oh, a Wings reference.
Yes.
Wow. Very cool. I'm going to have to look that up.
Yeah.
So Kirk is on the stand, and he led off by saying that he's at a loss to explain these computer errors, and he referred to them as errors. And he's kind of going down the role of, hey, listen, I've had a lot of crises in my time at the helm of at the captainship of the Enterprise, right? And
he's saying this isn't my first rodeo,
right? And and we as viewers have got to agree with him because we've seen 19 previous crises to this, right? We've seen all these episodes. We know what he's been through. I mean, he just fought the Gorn, for God's sake. He's been through a lot of stuff, and he's saying, "Listen, I don't panic when this stuff comes up, man. Listen, I've been in some tough spots." He said, "Didn't you see?" What happened when I faced off against that Romulan guy? That was pretty tense.
Yeah.
And I maintained my cool. So, it's kind of strange to think that, little Ion Storm, would get under my skin like that, right? So, I think that's actually kind of a quality defense, but he still hasn't offered any real evidence, hard, concrete evidence to refute the computer's logs.
Yeah. And now we're actually going to get a visual extract of what happened with what seems to be, camera choices or camera placement choices.
Yep.
And then also an awesome zoom function that the prosecution introduces.
Yeah, this is the early version of zoom and enhance, right? Every show we see.
Yeah, it's kind of neat to think, that they have a sort of a bird's eye view of the bridge that captures every moment. And one thing to take notice here, Sulu is not on the bridge.
Nope. And Sulu and Scotty both don't appear in this episode.
Yeah.
So yet another one. So, by the way, this is the future where everything is recorded. I'm surprised there's no Google logo in the little corner down there. So one day, everything we do is going to be recorded, just like the bridge of the Enterprise.
Yeah.
So here comes the zoom feature shortly here. They're going to show Kirk. They're going to show Kirk pressing a button on his console here. That's that supposedly he has a button on his arm of his chair that will eject this pod.
Yeah, but also
jettison pod. There it is.
He's got a yellow alert, a red alert, and jettison pod.
Yeah, right.
I never noticed how absurd that was.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand the yellow alert and the red alert buttons, but that seems so oddly specific. A jettison pod button.
It totally is, and the only reason they jettison the pod is to pick up some or to lose some weight.
Yeah, and it's great that you could. There's so many possibilities now with that jettison pod button. I mean, all the times the ship shakes. I mean, how many times could he have accidentally hit that with his elbow?
Oh, the pod would probably be the most dangerous place to be on the ship.
I know, right? I mean, what if he sneezed and it is his
or
little...
he puts his coffee down on the wrong,
clink.
The wrong side of his chair.
Yeah, somebody comes over, leans on the arm of the chair to talk to him, ejects the pod, and issues a yellow and red alert at the same time. There it is.
And there's 2 random buttons that I guess haven't been assigned to anything yet.
Yeah, they're customizable, and they don't have colors either.
Yeah. So now we have the moment where they show that he clearly jettisoned the pod before going to red alert, and his defense is his jaw almost hits the floor.
Yeah, so that, and it's completely contradictory to his own memory of the events, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So, and now the daughter's losing it.
Yeah.
It's like Kirk murdered, and even Cogley is confused by this.
Yeah.
And Kirk's even saying that's not the way it happened. And there we go, fade the commercial. Great fade the commercial. Good time for that.
Oh, yeah.
Another cool digital external scene there. And so Kirk is trying to figure this out with Cogley back in Cogley's office. And, computers don't lie. Yeah. So now they're trying to, Cogley is even sort of doubting it. That, maybe Kirk had some sort of a lapse in judgment, a lapse in memory, that he's getting confused, and maybe, they should change their plea.
Yeah.
This is one of those tense situations where, the viewer, as a viewer of this show, you have to be getting a little on edge for Kirk, right?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, you're like, wait a minute, this is the hero of the show here. This is the big main character, the head honcho, and and maybe he's leaving the show.
Yeah, because I mean, there's really no way to see past this. I mean, he clearly pushed that button before he was supposed to.
Yeah, and unless somehow, some way, someone's setting him up. We don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting little thought you just put forward there, Jeff.
Yeah, but and that's exactly the thought that I wanted to put into Spock's head here.
Yeah, and I guess the word chess.
Yep.
Sort of brings gives Spock an idea, and now we have sort of a change of heart from Finney's daughter.
Yeah, that was really quick turnaround.
Yeah, she wants him to just accept a ground assignment. So basically, agree not to captain a ship anymore, but not to follow through with any kind of, I guess criminal charges. I guess.
Right. She doesn't want to lock Kirk away, or she doesn't want to put him behind bars for a long time. She's trying to be merciful. It's kind of nice, but it is a really quick and unexplained turnaround.
Yeah, it was one of those things where as I was watching the episode, I was like, did I miss something? Because the last we saw, she, viewed the videotape, the video evidence of Kirk basically, killing her dad.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's Kirk's animal magnetism getting to her, And, here's a good Spock and McCoy exchange. So, McCoy is enraged that Spock is sitting here playing chess with a computer.
Yeah.
He's kind of going off half-cocked because he doesn't understand. He doesn't yet know what Spock is doing.
Yeah. And this is, I guess, one of the great Star Trek mysteries is the rules for this game were never clearly established.
No.
So,
no, they weren't.
Fans over the years have sort of tried to create their own rules based on the episodes that the game appeared in, but there was never any clear-cut, defining rules on how the game worked. And you'd almost imagine if they made this show today, they would have, they would create the game, they'd market it, and they'd sell it.
Absolutely, for sure. So Spock is saying essentially that the computer is flawless and he should not be able to beat it.
Yeah, because he programmed it.
Right, he programmed it.
Told this computer how to play chess. So if they played 10 times, they should basically have a draw 10 times because neither one has an advantage over the other.
Exactly. So what that currently proves, we're not sure. Yeah. But it just goes to show that something is up with the computer.
Yeah.
So Spock is going to investigate a little more in depth while the trial continues, while the court-martial continues. Yeah. So the prosecution is now resting.
And the defense is about to as well.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
And it will not rest well for Kirk.
No, and the proverbial goose is cooked. And at the last minute, in comes Spock. And, that's interesting that you can just barge right into a court-martial proceeding, right? Mm-hmm. Kirk, Spock and McCoy have just kind of run into the scene here. And after they've rested even. Yeah. So, of course, they come in with new evidence. And so we're getting a little pushback from the prosecution saying that, listen, this is theatrical nonsense. We got a rule now. Everybody's rested. We have all the evidence.
Yeah. And then Cogley's response is pretty good. He says, we're talking about a man's career and life here. You think there's really room for theatrics?
Yeah. And he's citing all of these famous religious and governmental books and statutes and things. So he mentions the Magna Carta, he mentions the Bible, Hammurabi's Code, all kinds of things to try to implore the council here or the tribunal to allow this new evidence to come to light. So to give Kirk his due before sending him away.
Yeah. And he's basically saying that my client hasn't had the ability to face his accuser, basically, which is the computer.
Yep, absolutely. So it's an interesting approach, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That he's like, listen, Kirk, and nobody has asked any questions of the computer. Yeah. You've been asking questions of all of these witnesses, but no one has actually put the machine itself on the witness stand. Mm-hmm. And that's what we need to do. We need to sit down and we need to analyze the computer, find out if there's something up, something's wrong, something's been reprogrammed, there's a malfunction. We got to figure this out. Yeah. And it's actually a good point, because up until now, they've pretty much taken the computer evidence as word, mm-hmm. And not even questioned it and used it to pretty much convict Kirk without even trying him.
Oh, yeah.
So here we are. We're back in orbit, and I think we're going to move everybody up to the ship at this part. The court-martial's reconvened on the Enterprise itself. Yeah. And Spock is presenting the fact that he's beaten the computer at chess 5 times.
Yeah, nobody seems that impressed with that.
I'm not statistic. Either. I'm not either. Although I do understand the gravity of it. It seems like kind of a silly thing to point out, but he's saying it proves that the computer can't make an error. Yeah. But the best that normally could be asked for is a stalemate, and yet he's been able to beat it. Mm-hmm. And so either someone accidentally or deliberately adjusted the programming. So now there's a little something that kind of sticks up to me as someone who's been a computer programmer for a long time. Now, computer programs are not one big, huge program, right? I mean, the chess program is one piece of the system. I mean, you run it on the system. So anything that somebody else did in the system really technically shouldn't affect the computer's chances of winning a chess game.
Mm-hmm. You'd think somebody would have went in, I guess, to that program's particular script or something.
You would, in order to affect the computer's chances of winning or not winning a chess game, someone would have had to go into the code for the chess game itself. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the worst you could do, outside of the code is mess with something in the operating system that would cause the game to crash, right? But, to actually affect the computer's chances of winning a chess game from a programmatic standpoint, you would have to actually edit the code of the chess program itself. So that's a little far-fetched.
Yeah. Do you think, that 200 years, in our future, that the way computers work will be inherently different than they are now?
Well, two answers to that question. One, in real life, yes. In Star Trek, from the evidence we've seen, the way computers work in Star Trek, they haven't.
Okay.
So, putting myself in the actual Star Trek universe, So let's jump ahead here to the actual show again, because we're skipping over some
we just
important
missed
stuff.
A very important reveal that basically Cogley has come to the conclusion that Ben Finney is not dead.
Yeah, exactly. So, he's come to the conclusion that Finney has actually altered the computer logs in some way and to set up Kirk, right? So he's framing Kirk. So now they're going to come up with a way they've taken all of the people
amazingly
off the ship.
The Enterprise is basically at a staffed level that it rarely happens. Everybody has been sent off on shore leave of some kind.
Yep.
Leaving everybody who's on the bridge and like one or two engineers.
That's it. Yep.
Yeah.
On the ship. So there's really essentially nobody on the ship.
Yeah. It creates kind of a really sort of, for me, a creepy visual, like of, this huge starship that, only has like a dozen people on it. I don't know. There's just, it created like a creepy image for me.
Yeah. Empty hallways and rooms and corridors. And so, all right. Now we've just got confirmation that everybody has left the ship.
Yeah. And McCoy's about to get this. And this is where you almost wonder they had done a little bit more work with the remastering somehow. So basically they're listening to the combined heartbeats of everybody on the ship.
Yeah, pretty amazing they can do that.
Yeah. What's even more amazing now is this microphone with a piece of white tape around it that McCoy is going to use to eliminate the heartbeat of everybody on the bridge. And then Spock is going to remotely do it for the people, or it's red tape, I'm sorry, in the engineering section. It wouldn't have been cool if in the remastered version they were somehow able to sort of do a replacement there and not have this mic with the red tape on it and, giving him some kind of, I almost would have preferred like, just the tricorder, nub that they use.
Or it should have been,
hey, the tricorder has this capability built into it.
Or we have that little handheld black nodule that was the extension of the tricorder that they've used a couple of times. They could have just used that. This is an actual microphone with a twisty piece on the end. I guess when you twist the piece on the end, it samples your heartbeat, but it does it from some area in front of your own chest.
Yes.
Which is kind of strange. And how it could isolate one person's heartbeat from the next.
Yeah.
It's a little strange. But anyway, they've isolated it down and they still hear one heartbeat on the ship, despite the fact that they've taken everybody off the ship and they've digitally removed the people who are left on the ship's heartbeat. So there's one person somewhere on the ship hiding.
Yes.
And Commodore Stone has just said the name Finney.
Yeah.
And now they're going to localize the heartbeat and figure out exactly where it is on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
So it's somewhere in engineering, right? B-Deck in or near engineering. So they're going to seal it off. And they're going to go down there and check it out. Now, see, this is the part of the episode I would have thought it would have been really cool if it was like an alien or something.
Oh, yeah.
That would have been really cool. But so Finney's alive, they say. And Kirk is going to take it upon himself to go down there and find this dude. And they sent the lawyer down to retrieve Finney's daughter. So I guess they're assuming that Finney is kind of off his rocker at this point, right? Faked his own death.
Yes.
And they're going to bring the girl up to try to talk some sense into him if Kirk doesn't kill him first. He's got his
Yes.
phaser drawn. So entirely possible.
So what was really Finney's end game here?
Well, he wanted
was he
to
going to
ruin
hide out
Kirk.
on the Enterprise for the rest of his life?
You
Was
know,
he going to assume a new identity? I mean,
it's a good question
they
because
weren't going to put Kirk to death.
No, yeah, that's a good question. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to imagine an outcome to this that doesn't sound far-fetched, but I'm having trouble doing that. So I mean, even if Kirk was, put in jail, and Finney jumped off at a starbase somewhere else and tried to disappear, he still runs the risk of somebody finding him and seeing him, and that would immediately set Kirk free. So it just kind of sounds a little far-fetched to me. I'm not sure what his maybe he just didn't think it through. And now we're hearing from Finney himself.
Yeah.
Why he did this. So, he says he feels that Kirk has kept him from being more than he is. He's kind of kept Kirk has kept him from succeeding in his career. So I know there was a report earlier that Kirk had reported that Finney messed something up or fell asleep on the job or something, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So now Finney's got the drop on him. He's come out of hiding. He's got a phaser. And, but for Finney's saying he doesn't want to kill him.
Yeah, no, Finney's motives are very, very questionable.
Yeah. And he's killed the Enterprise.
Yeah, he's disabled a key component of the Enterprise.
Yeah, the primary energy circuits. And the orbit is probably decaying, right? Decaying. Yep. Variance at second level.
And this is where we basically get, or we're going to get, a scene that was deleted. When it comes up, we're going to get a kind of an awkward, in my opinion, awkward voiceover from Kirk while he's climbing through the Jeffries tube. And when we get to it, I'll talk about the original scene that was there before they decided to cut it.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Looking forward
for I guess timing reasons.
So yeah, so now we're saying Kirk is the one that logged the mistake that Finney made, and Finney is defending himself, saying he was a good officer, and he's kind of unjustly persecuted. He loved what he did. He loved his service, and Spock is trying to figure out. Now everybody's off the ship, so fixing this problem is not easy. Finney has. I can't. It's amazing to me that he would have thought of this whole thing ahead of time. That it would have come to this point where they are. So I don't know how. It's hard to say it was premeditated, this entire thing.
Yeah, he looks a little off his rocker.
Oh yeah, he's a little frazzled. Kind of got a little 5 o'clock shadow there. Got a lot of lines on his face. He looks significantly older than Kirk.
Yeah,
and the obligatory fight scene begins
with a lot of stuntmen.
Oh, big time, big time.
I'm normally pretty forgiving of this, but in this sequence, there are quite a few times where you can see the doubles.
Oh, absolutely. Clearly. There's double right there. I saw a Shatner's double. There's 2 doubles. That is clearly 2 doubles.
Yeah, not a fight on the level of what we saw last week with yesterday, or tomorrow was yesterday.
Oh, no, that was one of the really good ones, I think. And, we've seen, so far this season, we've seen some really good fight scenes. We got the Gorn, we got Gary Mitchell, we got the Tomorrow is Yesterday. You got a lot of really good physical fight scenes. One of the ultimate fight scenes is still coming up. Well, 2 of the ultimate fight scenes are still coming up, but we've had some really good ones. This, unfortunately, doesn't really rank. Although here's the Jeffries tube, by the way.
Yeah. So basically, instead of this quick jump to the Jeffries tube where we get this voiceover from Kirk, there was originally the intent to have the daughter come on board and convince her dad to reveal the location of, the part of the ship that needed attention.
Yeah, that would have actually made some sense, wouldn't it?
I think so, yeah. I also would like to think that the Enterprise would have some kind of self-diagnostic that it could run.
It usually does, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I'd also think that the combined efforts of Spock and Scotty would really have they probably would have been able to save the day.
Yeah, and you would have think Scotty would be somebody they would have kept on the ship for this.
Yeah, you'd think by default you'd always want,
Your best engineer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think. It just seems strange that, he was on vacation or something.
Well, I mean, Sulu wasn't around, so
Yeah, what the heck was going on here? So looks like we're getting better here.
Mm-hmm.
Things are looking up a little bit. Yeah. So everybody's kind of looking, and look at Uhura. Look at Uhura at the console here. She's flying the ship.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to see what personnel was in place.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to show. They kind of illustrate how Uhura is capable of much more than just being a communications officer, right?
Yeah, it seems like they had some pretty good cross training going on.
Yeah, a little bit of our corporate lives bleeding into the show, huh? So
yeah, basically all everything ends on a happy note.
Of course.
Yeah, Shaw's gonna give saying her goodbye to Kirk, and it seems like she's still kind of pining for him a little bit.
As is every woman who ever had a relationship with Kirk, as we'll find out. All of them, well, maybe with the exception of one, who we won't see until way, way later. But seems like all the women he runs into still have some sort of a flame for the old dog.
Mm-hmm. And we get a cool little reveal that Finney's going on trial, and Cogley is going to defend him.
Oh, why not? Why not? Sounds like a good one. They should have made that a follow-up episode. Oh, and Kirk's going to sneak a kiss in.
Yeah.
Oh. Leave him wanting more, Kirk. Always leave him wanting more.
As Shaw makes her exit from the bridge momentarily, I guess it's time to talk about the essential nature of the episode entitled Court Martial.
Sure is. So who wants to do the honors?
I know last week, you sort of needed convincing. I don't think you'll need convincing either way today, so I will just let you take the lead, and then I will offer my vote.
Well, I guess, we did learn a bit more about Kirk's past, right? A little bit here and there of this officer that he's had under his rank for quite a while, and the daughter. We had one really good exchange between Spock and McCoy, but other than that, I mean, I like this episode. I think it's a cool episode. I enjoy watching it. A lot of good tension, but I don't think any of that adds up to an essential vote for this episode.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you here. I don't think there's anything introduced here that isn't, sort of laid out in a future episode. I don't think you can really say the introduction of the dress uniform is enough to make this essential viewing. As busy as Kirk's past seems, I don't think we really need knowledge of everything that he did prior to being captain of the Enterprise. So, like you said, this is a pretty, entertaining episode. It's different, I'll say that, but that also doesn't make this essential. So I will go along with you and say this is not essential Star Trek viewing.
All right. So another, one of very few so far, double non-essentials.
Yeah. The only other one I can think of is Miri.
No, Squire of Gothos too, wasn't it? Squire of Gothos, I think.
Yeah.
Was double. So that's only 3 out of 20 episodes.
Yeah, not bad. And we are going to do sort of a season 1 wrap up when we're done. So if you're not, if you were worried about keeping track of where we stand on certain things, we will sort of go back and recap and possibly even change our vote on some episodes.
Oh, that's a bold statement. And, anybody out there, if you listen on iTunes or your podcast catcher application and you don't actually go to our website, if you're curious to look back on our history of voting on these episodes, you can go to the tricordertransmissions.com and click on the essential episode guide on the left-hand side of the page, and you'll get a running history of how we voted on each of the 20 episodes that we've covered so far.
Yeah, that's been a good reference for me. In fact, when I go to the page every Sunday to see the episode, see the episode posted. I do go to the essential page and sort of look back and see where we've disagreed. And I think our wrap up show at the end of season 1 is going to be interesting, and hopefully I can sway you on if nothing else, shore leave.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say that. You got a tough road to hoe, brother.
All right, well,
tough road to hoe.
We'll deal with that when we get to it, and I guess
Yes.
that brings us to the end of another episode of the Tricorder Transmissions.
It certainly does, and join us again next week, same time, same place, for the return of the Archons.
All right, and I will see you then, Jeff, and thank you, as always, everyone, for spending some time with us.
Were you watching him the exact moment he pressed the jettison button?
No, I was occupied. The ship was already on yellow alert.
Then how can you dispute the finding of the log?
I do not dispute it. I merely state that it is wrong.
Oh? On what do you base that statement?
I know the captain. He is in...
Please instruct the witness not to speculate.
Lieutenant, I am half Vulcanian. Vulcanians do not speculate. I speak from pure logic. If I let go of a hammer on a planet that has a positive gravity, I need not see it fall to know that it has, in fact, fallen.